The false heiress staged a hunger strike, and my brother forbade me from entering the door. After being abducted for a decade, I have finally returned to my home. However, a foster daughter has already usurped my position within the household. In a desperate attempt to prevent my entrance, the foster daughter weeps and refuses to eat. Mingzhu is delicate. Your return will surely distress her. Perhaps it would be best for you to reside outside for a while. My brother, with a look of remorse, offered his apologies to me. Yet, without room for dissent, he escorted me to a secluded courtyard, denying me the chance to refuse. In fact, he even dispatched numerous servants to keep a vigilant watch, fearing I might cause a disturbance. I gazed at my unfamiliar brother and suddenly began to long for my foster brother, who is far away at the frontier. 1. On the day I moved into the new courtyard, my elder brother, Pei Yan, assured me that he would come to fetch me home once he had persuaded Mingzhu. Yet, after 2 years of fruitless attempts, he had not succeeded. The people of the capital regarded me as a mere jest. Who could forget that the Pei family's reclaimed young lady presented herself with the demeanor of a countrywoman, her manners coarse and her intellect lacking, unworthy of any respectable company. Despite 2 years of studying the etiquette befitting a noble family, I remained unfit for entry into the Pei residence. The rumors circulating were utterly absurd. It was plain that Mingzhu had threatened me with starvation to prevent my entry. Pei Yan, feeling compassion for his foster sister, had no choice but to acquiesce to her demands. Yet, he claimed to outsiders that I was illiterate and unfamiliar with the customs of nobility, asserting that my aversion to the Pei household's lifestyle was the reason for my solitary dwelling. Upon first hearing these slanders, I was incensed, contemplating a confrontation at the Pei manor. However, recalling the stern admonishments of my foster brother, Xia Linyuan, to avoid causing troubles in the capital, I managed to suppress my indignation. Life in the capital was exceedingly dull. Each day upon awakening, I was greeted only by the confines of this modest courtyard. Pei Yan had engaged a female tutor and an etiquette instructor to teach me literacy and manners. Strangely, these two were rather harsh towards me, frequently extolling Mingzhu's virtues, claiming I could not compare even to her little toe. I harbored a deep-seated aversion towards them, often skipping lessons and clandestinely scaling the walls to wander the streets. Outside the courtyard, numerous servants from the Pei household were stationed, ostensibly to protect me, yet in truth, they were there to keep me under surveillance. Pei Yan did not wish for me to remain confined within these walls, but he was unaware that those attendants were no match for me. 2. After yet another scolding from my tutor, I flung down my brush and slipped out through the back door. The streets were alive with the cacophony of voices, and I navigated the crowd with ease, having grown accustomed to this environment. The proprietress of the steamed bun shop spotted me from afar and waved me over. "My dear, it's been some time since you last visited. Here, try this freshly steamed lamb bun." Aunt Shou handed me a bun with warmth. Ever since I had helped her fend off a few ruffians 2 years ago, she had treated me with kindness. "Had another quarrel with your tutor today?" With little business at hand, Aunt Shou settled beside me, engaging in casual conversation. I nodded and corrected her. It was a one-sided scolding, not a quarrel. I never retorted when scolded, for I knew that any rebuttal would lead her straight to the Pei residence to report my defiance. Indeed, it was a scolding, not a quarrel. Our Yuan is such a kind-hearted girl. How could she ever argue? It's those adults who simply do not understand. Aunt Shou consoled me in a manner that made me realize she was merely placating me. My nose suddenly felt a bit sour. In the past, during my time in the border town of Yuqing, many had praised me for my spirited and affable nature, including the steward of the general's mansion, the owner of the noodle shop, and the soldiers in the barracks. Why was it that upon arriving here, those qualities had transformed into flaws? My assertiveness was deemed troublesome by Pei Yan, while my penchant for martial arts was criticized by my tutor as lacking the grace befitting a woman. 3. After spending the afternoon with Aunt Shou, I finally rose to return home as dusk approached. At this hour, my tutor should have already returned to the Pei manor. She traveled by sedan chair each morning to my residence, only to return in the evening. I had heard her mention that previously, she would spend merely an hour teaching Mingzhu reading and writing in the manor, after which she had the freedom to pursue her own interests. How unlike the current situation, where she had to journey daily to instruct me, her disobedient pupil. Upon returning home, I discovered 2 new figures in the courtyard. My brother, Pei Yan, had brought along Mingzhu. Bored, she playfully picked up a fallen leaf and placed it atop Pei Yan's head, only to be caught in the act. What nonsense! Pei Yan's reproach lacked any real authority, provoking a fit of laughter from Mingzhu. How curious it was. When Pei Yan chided me with the same words, he wore a stern countenance, his tone grave. Mingzhu turned and spotted me standing at the door. "Sister Yuan, you're back." She beckoned to me, her voice sweet as honey. Pei Yan turned, his previously gentle smile faltering, the corners of his mouth drooping. Yet in an instant he regained his composure, rising to approach me, extending his hand in an attempt to grasp mine. I cast a sidelong glance at his insincere smile and deftly evaded his touch. Ignoring the look of astonishment in his eyes, I inquired directly, "What brings you here?" It seemed my tutor had returned to report my misdeeds. In the 2 years I had spent here, Pei Yan had come to see me only a handful of times, most often in response to complaints. "Sister Yuan, I came to see you because I've missed you. It's been far too long," Mingzhu exclaimed with genuine warmth. Yet, her enthusiasm differed from Aunt Zhou's kindness. "Brother is truly busy with affairs. The last time we met was a month ago. I worried you might be lonely, so I asked him to come and apologize." Mingzhu shot a playful glare at Pei Yan as she spoke. A flicker of embarrassment crossed his face. He settled beside me, attempting to soften his tone. "Did you sneak out again today? After 2 years in the capital, you've learned little in terms of literacy, but your wall-climbing skills have certainly improved." Pei Yan's voice was teasing, seemingly trying to lighten the mood. I remained silent, the courtyard's stillness amplifying my desire to flee. Just the other day, the matron had remarked on my rapid progress, claiming I was learning quite well. Soon, I would be able to accompany her to pay respects to our parents. For, when Pei Yan found me, I had initially no intention of accompanying him to the capital. However, he had appeared with red-rimmed eyes, lamenting that our parents had been consumed by guilt since I was abducted by human traffickers. Eventually, my mother succumbed to despair, and my father passed away during his search for me. The weight of familial bonds stirred something within me upon hearing his words, compelling me to consent to his request. Yet, after 2 years in this place, I had not even paid my respects to my parents' spirit tablets. I remained mute, unwilling to engage with Pei Yan's attempts at conversation. Noticing my reticence, he fell silent as well. However, Mingzhu's reaction to his words was instantaneous, her face drained of color, sorrow evident in her gaze. "Sister Yuan is going to see our parents. Does that mean she can finally return to the Pei family?" Pei Yan glanced at her, nodding slightly. "It is not right for Yuan to continue living here indefinitely. If Sister Yuan returns, does that mean I must leave?" Mingzhu's eyes brimmed with tears, trembling at the thought. I understood her pain as she forced a bitter smile. "I shall pack my things and depart at once." With that, she turned and fled the scene. Her frail figure appeared helpless and pitiful. As she reached the door, Mingzhu stumbled over the threshold, falling to the ground. Pei Yan immediately stood, concern etched upon his brow. Mingzhu did not pause, quickly rising and disappearing from sight. "Aren't you going to chase after her?" "It's not safe out so late," I gently reminded him. Pei Yan hesitated for a moment, ultimately choosing to sit back down. "Never mind. She has grown up now. I cannot indulge her forever, and besides, she has her guards to ensure her safety. I came to share dinner with you tonight. The kitchen prepared several dishes. Do give them a taste." As he spoke, Pei Yan opened the food box on the table, presenting the dishes one by one. It had been quite some time since we siblings sat down together for a meal. He served food into my bowl, persistently urging me to try. I took a bite, and indeed, the flavor was delightful. Yet regrettably, none of it was to my liking. We dined in silence. To be precise, I was the only one eating. Pei Yan, with his chopsticks poised, did not touch his food, his mind evidently elsewhere. I recognized his worry for Mingzhu. Counting quietly in my mind, I reached 7 before Pei Yan set down his chopsticks and stood. Yuan, I apologize, but I must leave and visit you again another time." Without waiting for my response, he hastily dashed out. It was only after his silhouette vanished at the door that I set down my chopsticks. This meal had truly sapped my appetite. I surveyed the courtyard, which was neither too large nor too small, and pondered how Pei Yan had arranged for secret guards for Pei Mingzhu. Yet, had he considered whether it was safe for just me and 2 maidservants to remain here? Since that day, the 2 had not returned to visit me. One day, I climbed over the wall as usual to take a stroll. I had intended to visit Aunt Shou, as I had not eaten for several days and found myself craving her dumplings. However, my gaze fell upon a familiar figure at the entrance of a tavern. Pei Mingzhu? Why was she out? Unlike her usual attire, she was now dressed as a man, walking alongside several individuals who clearly belonged to the gentry. Yet, her disguise was rather clumsy. It was evident she was but a young girl. She was being escorted by a handsome young man as they entered the tavern. I averted my gaze and continued on my way, but after taking a few steps, my feet seemed to freeze in place. Cursing under my breath, I turned back and followed them into the tavern. The group had reserved a private room on the third floor, and I concealed myself in the shadows, quietly observing the situation within. Today's meeting is fateful. Brother Pei, let us toast to that. A man in purple attire raised his glass, urging Pei Mingzhu to drink. As she sipped her drink, I noticed the furtive glances exchanged among the other men. It was clear that this group had ulterior motives concerning Pei Mingzhu. Where were her secret guards? Pei Mingzhu, evidently not accustomed to drinking, had already flushed after just 2 cups, making her appear even more alluring. Observing her inebriation, the men began to act inappropriately, pinching her cheeks and tugging at her hands. I was beside myself with anxiety outside, unsure of how to intervene. Although I held no affection for Pei Mingzhu, it was not in my nature to stand idly by while she faced such indignities. I contemplated seeking help from the Pei residents, but feared that something untoward might occur during my absence. In my turmoil, Pei Mingzhu had already collapsed. With their inhibitions lifted, the men began to strip her of her clothing. With a resolute determination, I kicked open the door. The occupants of the room turned to stare at me in unison. Who are you? How dare you disrupt our enjoyment? I am your ancestor. I locked the door behind me and rushed to Pei Mingzhu, kicking down the man attempting to undress her. Seeing a woman take action enraged the others, who swiftly sought to retaliate against me. They were nothing but drunken louts. Hardly a match for me. I swiftly incapacitated them and splashed tea from the table onto Pei Mingzhu's face. The cold liquid jolted her awake. Upon seeing my face, Pei Mingzhu appeared momentarily bewildered. However, as she noticed her exposed shoulder and the fallen men around her, a look of terror crossed her features. What are you doing here? She asked, hastily adjusting her clothing. I was disinclined to engage in further dialogue, urging her instead to tidy herself and leave with me. I led Pei Mingzhu through the back alleys until we reached the vicinity of the Pei residence. When we were still a narrow lane away, I halted, signaling for her to enter on her own. Pei Mingzhu's face was pale, her expression betraying her lingering shock. Aren't you coming in with me? She inquired. Didn't you refuse to let me in due to your hunger strike? I countered before turning to exit the alley. After such a commotion, I had lost my appetite for dumplings and decided to return home. Her words stirred up some unpleasant memories. When I had just moved into the new courtyard, Pei Yan had hired a nursemaid to oversee my daily life. Initially, I believed he was acting in my best interest. Yet, as time passed, I realized that this nursemaid, under the guise of caring for me, was merely spying. The monotony of home life led me to crave outdoor excursions, but each time I expressed a desire to go out, the nursemaid would react as if faced with a dire threat, chiding me for being a young lady who should not be so brazenly visible. She claimed the outside world was unsafe and warned me not to bring trouble to the Pei family. Should I insist on going out, she would follow me closely, urging me to return home after a mere half hour. The nursemaid was required to return to the Pei residence twice a month to visit her family. One day, I whimsically decided to follow her to the Pei residence, thinking that if I could not enter through the front, I could sneak in. Under the cover of night, I trailed behind her at a distance. She entered the Pei residence and approached a door in the main courtyard, knocking gently. I concealed myself atop the roof, peering down through the tiles. The room within was exceedingly spacious, adorned with numerous books and paintings. Pei Yan sat behind a large writing desk, practicing his calligraphy. This must be his study. The nursemaid stood before the desk, her lips moving as she spoke. I strained to listen, and it appeared she was discussing my daily life. She remarked on my cleverness and how quickly I learned. However, through the dim candlelight, I observed that Pei Yan did not appear particularly pleased. He sighed and rubbed his temples. This girl, Yuan, is truly striving to learn and return home. Yet, Mingzhu does not wish for her to come back, which troubles me greatly. Though Yuan was my biological sister, Mingzhu had accompanied me for so many years, and I could not bear to see her saddened. In the future, teach Yuan at a slower pace. Do not allow her to learn so quickly. After a brief pause, he added, at the appropriate time, you and the instructor can apply some pressure on her. The nursemaid nodded vigorously. Before departing, as if struck by a thought, she warned Pei Yan. The eldest young lady always enjoys going out. I worry each time she leaves that she may venture to the Pei residence. If she wishes to go out, then let her, but you must keep a close watch on her. If she approaches the Pei residence, take her elsewhere. Do not allow her to come here. I fear Mingzhu may think too much. The conversation within the room ceased. I lay atop the roof, despite the summer heat, a chill running down my spine. Days later, I broached the subject of returning to the border with Pei Yan, but he suddenly darkened his expression. Yuan, you're the daughter of the Pei family, my sister. The Pei family is your true home. Forget about the border affairs as soon as possible. Xia Linyuan has led you into the military camp. Showing no regard for your reputation, he has not treated you like family at all. I was bewildered by Pei Yan's anger. He clearly did not wish for me to stay in the Pei residence, yet he also did not want me to leave. When he spoke ill of Xia Linyuan, I felt a surge of displeasure and coldly turned my back on him for the first time. Eventually, he apologized, and I forgave him. The day after Pei Mingzhu's drunken escapade, I remained at home, perusing the sketchbooks I had previously purchased. As noon approached, a cacophony of footsteps echoed from outside the courtyard. I intended to investigate, but in the next moment, the front door was flung open. Pei Yan entered, followed by a throng of individuals. His lips were pressed tightly, and his brows furrowed, as if he could crush a fly. His eyes burned with fury, a stark contrast to his usual refined demeanor. Pei Mingzhu stood behind him, her expression grim, her eyes slightly swollen. Upon meeting my gaze, she quickly averted her eyes. I did not recognize the people behind him, but my instincts told me they were a formidable group. Pei Yan approached me, step by step. Xia Linyuan. This was the first time he had addressed me by my full name. You have quite the audacity. This was his second statement. I was aware of my boldness, but was perplexed by his rage. I had thought you merely mischievous, but it appears you have sunk to maliciousness. Considering the hardships you endured for 10 years after being abducted, I tolerated and indulged you, only to realize I had emboldened your audacity to the point of bullying Mingzhu. Pei Yan's barrage of words left me increasingly bewildered.
What do you mean by that?
When have I ever bullied her? Do not attempt to quibble. Pei Yan raised his voice, his anger palpable. Mingzhu's secret guards have informed me that yesterday you took her out and bullied her, only to feign normalcy when bringing her back to the Pei residence. I was left utterly speechless by Pei Yan's inexplicable accusations. I came to the realization that the entirety of yesterday's calamity involving Pei Mingzhu has been unjustly placed upon my shoulders. Her shadow guard must have uttered some words before Pei Yan, leading him to believe that I had bullied her. In that moment, I found myself at a loss, caught between indignation and amusement. This shadow guard is quite the character, unable to properly safeguard her charge, yet seeking to cast me as the scapegoat. I turned my gaze toward Pei Mingzhu, but she simply averted her eyes, her head bowed low. Pei Mingzhu, I called out, do you have nothing to say? Has your conscience been devoured by dogs? Enough. Pei Yan interjected, swiftly positioning himself protectively in front of Pei Mingzhu, his gaze fixed firmly on me. Do you still intend to intimidate her? The elders of the Pei family are present. You must provide Mingzhu with an explanation for yesterday's incident. An explanation? I let out a derisive laugh, my hands clenched tightly as I struggled to suppress the fury simmering within me. The betrayal of my own brother and the regret of having saved an ungrateful wretch ignited a tempest of thoughts that caused my words to spill forth recklessly. My explanation is this. If I could rewind to yesterday, I would never have saved Pei Mingzhu. I would have stood by and watched her be toyed with to her demise by a throng of men.
Slap.
A hand, imbued with impressive force, struck my face, sending my head spinning to the side. The metallic taste of blood filled my mouth, and my right cheek throbbed as if 100 ants were gnawing at it. Pei Yan had struck me. It took a moment for the shock to register, and when it did, Pei Yan appeared to realize the gravity of his actions. A fleeting look of astonishment crossing his face before he quickly regained his composure. Xia Linyuan, How could you, a young lady, speak so venomously? Are you attempting to drive Mingzhu to her death? This slap serves as a lesson for you. The onlookers from the Pei family regarded our exchange as though it were an entertaining spectacle. From the crowd, someone remarked, at such a tender age. She can ruin another's reputation. She must be that kind of person herself. In a military camp filled with men, she is the sole girl. Perhaps she is no longer a virtuous maiden. Indeed, having wandered alone since childhood, lacking guidance, she knows nothing of decorum. No wonder Pei Yan forbids her entry. If I were him, I would prefer Mingzhu, who is superior in every way. The venomous remarks rained upon me, heavy with malice. Pei Yan frowned but remained silent. Pei Mingzhu stepped forward, tugging at his sleeve, whispering, "Brother, let it go." Sister Yuyan didn't mean it. I took her place. It's only natural she would be angry. I turned to face the brother and sister duo, memories of my own childhood flooding back. Even when I was in trouble, my adoptive parents could never bear to strike me, at worst making me stand in the courtyard. During those times, Xia Linyuan would silently squat beside me. Over the years, I had never endured a shred of injustice at the Xia household. The soldiers in the camp, out of respect for Xia Linyuan, treated me as a sister, teaching me to wield a blade, shoot arrows, and ride horses. Any new wonder they encountered, they would bring to amuse me. As these recollections swirled in my mind, my eyes began to sting. Brother, if you expect me to behave obediently in the capital and avoid causing trouble, I fear I must renege on that promise. With clenched fists, I struck Pei Yan squarely in the face. The courtyard fell into an eerie silence. Everyone was momentarily stunned by the unexpected turn of events, rendered speechless. Pei Mingzhu was the first to scream. Pei Yan, raised in scholarly pursuits, had only trained his body and learned a few self-defense techniques. My punch caught him off guard, causing him to stumble backwards several steps. He turned to me, his expression one of disbelief, his usual composure shattered. If you deem me unworthy, then do not bring me back. I shot back. You, who hail from a prestigious lineage, now occupy a high position, and yet a mere handful of shadow guards can manipulate you so easily. And you lot. I glared at the group behind me. I care not for your insults. But should you dare tarnish the name of the Xia family again, your fate will mirror his. The grievances I had bottled up for 2 years erupted in that moment. I glared fiercely at Pei Yan, my body taut, poised for conflict. A trickle of blood escaped from the corner of his mouth. He wiped it away, ultimately softening his demeanor. Yan, I know you harbor resentment toward me for not allowing you into the Pei family. I admit my fault. I will return home, rectify the situation, and within 3 days, I shall bring you back. However, Mingzhu cannot suffer unjustly. You must apologize to her today, and we shall consider this matter resolved. Pei Yan spoke as though he were bestowing upon me a monumental favor. I let out a scoff, my gaze filled with disdain. Apologize?
Do not even think about it.
With that, I turned to enter the house. Pei Mingzhu grasped my arm. Sister, I know you harbor animosity toward me, but my brother is innocent. How could you strike him? If you must strike, let it be me instead. Strike her? What a splendid idea. I raised my hand and delivered a resounding slap to her face. What a wretched ingrate. Pei Mingzhu lost her balance and fell to the ground. Her pale complexion quickly bore the imprint of my hand, and blood began to trickle from her palms as they met the ground. Mingzhu. Pei Yan's expression changed dramatically as he rushed to help her, examining her with great concern. Others hurried forward, showering her with inquiries of care. I was met with a barrage of furious, accusatory glares. Yuyan, I have already said you may enter the household. What more do you want? Pei Mingzhu is the cherished daughter of the Pei family, her constitution delicate. Do not presume she is as resilient as you are.
Pei Yan.
What is there to discuss with someone like her? An elderly man, his hair as white as snow, emerged, regarding me with the disdain reserved for an insect. Although his demeanor was somewhat coarse, he was nonetheless a member of the Pei family, and wrongdoing must be met with the family's discipline. Upon hearing the term family discipline, Pei Yan's eyes flickered with inner turmoil. This. Just then, Pei Mingzhu fainted, her eyes rolling back. He immediately abandoned all pretense, scooping her up and hastily departing. Before leaving, he tossed back a remark. We will heed the elder's words. Be gentle with her. Once Pei Yan departed, The others followed suit. The elder, whom Pei Yan had referred to, cast me a dispassionate glance, as though I were a lifeless entity. Several burly men encircled me. With years of martial training, I recognized that these individuals were no novices. The household guards were mere children in comparison. Though I was unaware of what family discipline entailed, I sensed that today would not pass without consequence. After a brief scuffle, I found myself forcibly seated upon a chair. The Pei family steward observed my predicament with an air of amusement. Typically, one would require disrobing for the punishment of the rod, but considering you are a lady, we shall forego that formality. The rod fell heavily behind me. I gritted my teeth, feeling as though my back, buttocks, and thighs were being scorched by fire. 1, 2. A total of 50 strikes. By the end, my exhalations were far more rapid than my inhalations. At that moment, I was profoundly grateful for my years of martial training, for it had fortified my body beyond that of the average person, preventing me from perishing under their blows. Once they had finished, they left me alone in the courtyard. It seemed they intended for me to fend for myself. The sun blazed mercilessly at noon. I slumped over the bench, my eyelids growing increasingly heavy, too weary to keep them open. In the haze of my stupor, it felt as though someone was calling my name. Little beggar. The tone was reminiscent of the mischievous and cunning Xia Linyuan from my childhood. At 10 years old, he had adored calling me that. Our first meeting had occurred while I begged for food on the streets. My memories before the age of 5 were nearly non-existent. I only recalled being trafficked and shuffled about. As a girl, no one wished to purchase me, with the traffickers often proclaiming me to be ill-fated. Our journey was fraught with difficulties until we reached Yuqing. The traffickers intended to snatch more children for sale. Little did they know they had entered the territory of the Xia family, where Xia Linyuan's father enforced strict military discipline and placed great importance on the security of Yuqing. When the traffickers attempted to abduct children, they encountered patrolling soldiers and were captured, paraded before the public. I had spent several days starving in a dilapidated hut, and when I found that the trafficker had not returned, I ventured out in search of food. In the bustling marketplace, I spotted a half-eaten meat pie discarded on the ground, and without a second thought, I lunged to retrieve it, only to be thwarted by a wild dog that snatched the pie away in its jaws. The wild dog spotted me and growled menacingly. In my youthful ignorance, I responded with a similar growl. Thus, a standoff ensued between man and beast until a laugh resonated from behind me. To my astonishment, someone was actually competing with the dog for food. I turned to see a young boy leaning against a wall, smiling at me. In his hands was a paper bag emitting an enticing aroma, with grease seeping through. As I gazed at him, saliva pooled in my mouth. Noticing my reaction, the boy unhesitatingly opened the bag and offered me a piece of meat. "Here you go, little beggar." The morsel vanished in mere chews. Watching the boy depart, I instinctively followed him until we reached a grand courtyard, where he turned and frowned at me. "What are you staring at? Still hungry?" I nodded. After a long pause, he seemed to relent, handing me the entire paper bag before turning to enter the gate. After satisfying my hunger, I settled against the wall and drifted into a stupor, remaining in that position for an entire day and night. The next day, the gate swung open, revealing 2 figures. One of them was the boy from yesterday, who appeared quite astonished to see me. "Why haven't you left yet?" The older man followed his gaze and, upon noticing me, inquired, "Do you know her?" The boy rolled his eyes and nodded. "All the roasted duck from yesterday ended up in her stomach. It's not that I was too playful to buy any." The man burst into hearty laughter and called for a servant to bring me some food. Thus, I lingered outside the courtyard daily, intermittently receiving scraps, with no inclination to wander elsewhere. One stormy night, rain poured relentlessly, leaving me with no shelter but to curl up tightly. My tattered clothes offered little protection against the biting cold. After an indeterminate period, the gate opened again, and the boy appeared, holding an umbrella as he approached me. He scrutinized me and sighed, "Little beggar, it seems you've taken a liking to our home." He extended his hand towards me, and subsequently, I found myself being led into the courtyard. His parents were warm-hearted, providing me with a bath and fresh clothes.
Goodness.
I didn't expect this girl to be so adorable. Thus, I began to reside there. The boy was named Xia Linyuan, the son of the General Zhenyuan, tasked with guarding Yuqing. He bestowed upon me the name Xia Linyuan, sharing the same pronunciation but differing in characters. Xia Linyuan's parents treated me as their own daughter. At the age of 10, my adoptive father perished in battle, while my adoptive mother refused to flee, enduring until her last moment, collapsing beside him. Xia Linyuan sequestered himself in his room for 2 days, refusing food or drink. When he finally emerged, he penned a memorial to the emperor, expressing his remorse and declaring his willingness to inherit his father's duties, vowing to defend Yuqing for life. Each time he marched into battle, Xia Linyuan led from the front, disregarding the pleas of his subordinates who felt he was recklessly endangering himself. At the age of 12, I expressed my desire to accompany him to the battlefield, which incensed Xia Linyuan greatly. He sternly refused. Yuan, if I am no longer here, you will be the sole pillar of the Xia family. You must safeguard our home. I was equally infuriated, deeming his words ominous. How could he speak of death? When I turned 15, a member of the Pei family arrived. The servant informed me that someone wished to see me, claiming to be my family. I refuse. I impatiently declined. Xia Linyuan had just returned from a fierce battle, gravely injured. I had kept vigil by his bedside for several days, during which he remained unconscious. At that moment, I had no desire to meet these so-called family members. To pray for Xia Linyuan's recovery, I visited a temple outside the city. As I emerged after my prayers, a figure obstructed my path. The man, handsome with a gentle smile, introduced himself as Pei Yan, my elder brother, claiming that our parents had not seen me before their passing. One should not strike a smiling face. I brought him back to the general's residence. Coincidentally, Xia Linyuan awoke and learned of the Pei family's presence. After a prolonged silence, he eventually encouraged me to return to the Pei family, stating, "With the current war situation, I cannot afford to care for you. Yuqing, being remote, cannot compare to the splendor of the capital. Yuan, go and pay respects to your parents. Otherwise, others may say the Xia family lacks propriety."
Pei Yan,
now favored by the emperor, saw the Pei family rising in stature. Xia Linyuan insisted that I should enjoy a better life in the capital. Unable to resist his persuasion, I reluctantly agreed to visit the capital. On the day of my departure, I sat in the carriage, frequently glancing back until Xia Linyuan's figure vanished from sight. During our journey to the capital, Pei Yan showed me great concern. Perhaps due to our blood relation, my attitude towards him gradually softened. However, there was one point of contention. He disliked me mentioning Xia Linyuan in his presence. Yuan, you are now a member of the Pei family. Do not constantly bring up Xia Linyuan. It tarnishes your reputation. Memories of the past rushed into my mind, causing a splitting headache. In a daze, it seemed someone was calling my name. Young lady of the Xia family. Such a familiar address. I struggled to open my eyes, and the figure before me gradually became clearer.
It was the sister-in-law from the Zhao family.
What was she doing here? Instinctively, I attempted to rise. But the moment I moved, a searing pain coursed through my body. Do not move. You are still injured. The Zhao sister-in-law hurriedly helped me lie back down, her eyes moistening as she took in my state.
How could they do this to you?
When we went to the Pei family searching for you, they were evasive. I knew then they must have committed some wrongdoing. The Zhao sister-in-law rambled on, recounting much. 3 months ago, a great victory was achieved at the border. Xia Linyuan led his troops into the Xiongnu royal city, beheading their leader. The emperor was overjoyed and summoned him back to the capital to report. Due to numerous matters to conclude, his return was delayed. The husband of the Zhao sister-in-law, a colleague of Xia Linyuan, had returned to the capital with his family to visit. Xia Linyuan followed with his army, but at a slower pace. The Zhao sister-in-law recounted how they had visited the Pei residence a few days prior, only to find the occupants evasive, claiming I was out or not present. Pei Yan was also unreachable. General Zhao, known for his temper, smashed a table in frustration, prompting the steward to fearfully disclose my whereabouts. By the time they arrived, they found me lying in a pool of blood. I had been unconscious for 3 days before regaining consciousness. Your brother is about to arrive, as well as others. We will surround the Pei residence and demand an explanation from that beast Pei Yan. How could he neglect his biological sister for an adopted one? Hearing her grievances, warmth filled my heart. I weakly grasped her hand, shaking my head to signify she should not confront Pei Yan. Just seeing old acquaintances was already a source of contentment for me. Besides, in my heart, Xia Linyuan held far greater significance than Pei Yan. What difference did it make if Pei Yan favored Pei Mingzhu more? As we spoke, a servant entered the room to announce Pei Yan's arrival. He stood at the door, seeking to take me home. A surge of resistance welled up within me.
No.
How dare he show his face here? Get someone to throw him out. My sister-in-law was so incensed that she erupted in furious denunciation. I found solace in residing with the Zhao family, feeling an unprecedented sense of relief. 7 days later, Xia Linyuan returned to the capital with his troops. On the day of his return, I asked my sister-in-law to reserve a private room for me at a tavern facing the street. As dusk settled, the streets overflowed with people. Soon, a dark line of soldiers marched through the city gates. Xia Linyuan led the procession astride his horse, clad in armor that accentuated his striking and formidable presence. I could even see many young girls in the crowd blushing. The regiment marched in unison, their footsteps resounding like thunder. Sensing something, Xia Linyuan glanced in my direction. I did not shy away, but waved at him. His gaze lingered on me for a moment before shifting back to the front. Though separated by distance, I am certain he is smiling. Today marks the Mid-Autumn Festival, and the Emperor is hosting a welcoming banquet for Xia Linyuan within the palace. My wounds have yet to heal, yet I cannot suppress the longing to see him. Upon his return, Xia Linyuan quickly changed his attire and entered the palace to meet the Emperor, leaving me no time to exchange even a few words with him. As evening approached, Sister Zhao took great care in adorning me and urged me into the carriage. You are bound to encounter that rascal Pei Yan tonight. Be firm and do not allow them to bully you again, she advised, her tone tinged with a mixture of concern and disappointment. Listening to her admonitions, I felt an urge to explain. It was not that I lacked courage, but rather that I had encountered someone of greater strength that day. Outside the palace gates, numerous carriages were stationed, and the sight of such a gathering filled me with anxiety. Upon our arrival at the venue for the Mid-Autumn banquet, I was surrounded by unfamiliar faces. Noticing our unfamiliarity, several forthright ladies approached us for conversation. Upon learning I was the wife of General Zhao, their demeanor shifted to one of polite civility, though the disdain and aloofness in their eyes remained unmistakable. And who might this be? One of the ladies inquired, glancing at me. Before Sister Zhao could respond, another voice interjected from behind us. Sister Yuan? The group turned to find Pei Mingzhu and Pei Yan standing behind us. Upon seeing me, Pei Yan's brow furrowed. I cast him a sidelong glance, having no intention of engaging in conversation. Pei Mingzhu approached me, attempting to grasp my arm, but I evaded her touch. Her gesture faltered, yet she resumed speaking as though nothing had occurred. Sister, why have you come? You haven't returned home in several days. And both brother and I have been quite worried about you. Her address of me as sister revealed my identity to those present, the rough-and-tumble daughter of the Pei family. The mention of my absence from home drew scrutinizing glances from the ladies around us.
What do you mean by that?
Sister Zhao, unable to contain herself, retorted loudly, drawing everyone's attention. What do you imply by saying our Yuan hasn't returned home? Faced with such public questioning, Pei Mingzhu appeared flustered and sought refuge behind Pei Yan. Pei Yan, with a gentle tone, interjected, Madame Zhao, you misunderstand. Mingzhu is merely concerned for her sister. Enough. She knows perfectly well what she means. Sister Zhao snapped, her voice cutting through the air. It's truly disgusting to make such comments to provoke speculation. Sister Zhao had never lost a quarrel in Yuqing. Pei Yan's face fluctuated between shades of red and blue as he turned to me. Why have you come here today? Yuan, please return home. You have never attended such a gathering. I fear you may not be accustomed to it. Is it a matter of being unaccustomed, or are you merely afraid I will embarrass you? I questioned pointedly. Lord Pei, even if I were to disgrace myself, it would reflect upon the Xia family, not you. Pei Yan stiffened, disbelief etched across his features at my words. A light chuckle reached my ears, causing me to freeze in place. Xia Linyuan had approached without my notice, standing beside me and looking down at me. The banquet has yet to commence, and you are already contemplating how to embarrass me? He teased, his familiar tone reminiscent of days gone by when he referred to me as little beggar. What brings you here? My voice trembled with emotion. Xia Linyuan affectionately ruffled my hair. I came to fetch you, only to find you being bullied. Having said that, his indifferent gaze swept over the Pei siblings. With so many eyes upon us, I wished to avoid further entanglements with the Pei family, gently tugging at his sleeve to indicate my desire to depart. Xia Linyuan smiled and allowed me to lead him away. Yuan. Pei Yan called out from behind, panic evident in his tone. I hesitated for a moment, but quickly resumed my pace beside Xia Linyuan. As the banquet commenced, I settled beside Xia Linyuan, who occasionally served me dishes and poured tea. Are you injured? He suddenly inquired. My hand faltered mid-action as I looked at him in disbelief. How did you know? Your gait is off, he observed, his expression darkening. Did he strike you? Unable to conceal the truth any longer, I nodded and recounted the events of the past few days. Xia Linyuan downed a cup of wine, maintaining his composure, yet I could sense the anger simmering beneath the surface. I shook his arm playfully, urging him to refrain from causing a scene in the capital. With his recent military achievements, many eyes were upon him, and I feared provoking trouble that could lead to an official complaint.
Ah?
The lady beside General Xia is indeed his wife? A melodious voice suddenly rang out in the grand hall. Upon hearing my name called, I instinctively looked towards the source of the voice. Beside the emperor sat a stunning beauty adorned in resplendent attire, her gaze fixed upon me. What a pity! She continued with a sweet smile. I had hoped to witness General Xia's youthful prowess and act as a matchmaker for you. Recognizing the insincerity behind her smile, I deduced her identity, consort Pei Waner, Pei Yan's cousin, and the daughter of his uncle. With the empress deceased, it was now Pei Waner who governed the harem. The thought that the person who had ordered my punishment that day was her father soured my feelings towards her. Just as Xia Linyuan was about to rise to respond, Pei Mingzhu's sweet voice interjected. To report to Consort Waner, Sister Yuan is the biological sister that brother found. In front of the assembled officials, Pei Mingzhu addressed the consort as sister, seeking to display their closeness. So it is your own sister. Come forth and let me have a look. Consort Pei Waner exclaimed with feigned surprise, beckoning me forward. I regarded her insincere expression and cast a sidelong glance at the seemingly innocent Pei Mingzhu nearby, feeling a wave of nausea at their hypocrisy. Consort Pei Waner was clearly aware of my identity, but opted to present me as Xia Linyuan's wife, intending to imply that I was disregarding propriety by sitting beside a man who was not a member of my family. Pei Yan appeared flustered and rose to bow. I asked for the consort's understanding. Lin Yuan has only been in the capital for 2 years and has yet to learn the proper etiquette. I fear she may inadvertently offend you, consort. I shot him a cold glance. He was relentless in portraying me as someone unworthy of respect. Amid the scrutinizing gazes of the assembly, I composed myself and stood, smoothing my attire as I walked to the center of the hall. Kneeling, I bowed deeply. This humble daughter, Xia Linyuan, pays her respects to your majesty and consort. May the emperor enjoy boundless fortune and longevity, and may the consort be blessed with health and happiness. Throughout the entire process, my gestures were precise, leaving no room for fault. Absurd. Before the emperor could speak, consort Pei Waner interjected. As a member of the Pei family, your parents searched for you for years, only to find you now claiming the surname Xia. How can you face your parents? How can you face your brother, who has sought you for so long? I have heard that you often bully Mingzhu at home. It seems that after years with General Xia, he has not taught you proper conduct. A barrage of accusations rained down upon me, and I could hear whispers among the crowd. The implications in consort Pei Waner's words suggested a relationship between Xia Linyuan and me that was far from honorable, as if we were not siblings but rather a clandestine concubine. Out of the corner of my eye, I noticed Xia Linyuan's expression darkening. I hastily interjected before he could rise, addressing the emperor instead, my voice steady and dignified. Your Majesty, when I was 5 years old, I was abducted by human traffickers and lived a life of hardship, often enduring beatings and scavenging for food alongside dogs. The late General Xia took pity on me and brought me home, adopting me as his daughter. They educated me and bestowed upon me the name Xia Linyuan. After my parents fell in battle, I followed Brother Pei Yan to the capital. For 2 years, no one has deemed it necessary to change my name. Consort, you claim I have wronged my parents, but how can I enter the doors of the Pei family to atone for my parents' honor? As for the alleged bullying of Mingzhu, I implore her to clarify before all present where and how I have wronged her, so that the consort may adjudicate on her behalf. After a lengthy and persistent discourse, I found myself kneeling upon the ground, my back perfectly straight. The emperor sat there, his fingers drumming upon the armrest, silent and contemplative. Pei Mingzhu's complexion was ashen, clearly astonished that I would lay bare such truths before an audience. As I recounted my struggle for sustenance against a dog, some onlookers displayed disdain, while others, particularly the mothers among them, wore expressions of sympathetic anguish. If my daughter endured such hardships in the world, I would surely be unable to bear it.
Indeed.
Had it not been for the benevolence of General Xie, who rescued her, she would have long since perished. Did not the Pei family claim her demeanor was uncouth? Yet, I had just witnessed her comportment rival that of those esteemed ladies of noble birth. They brought her home without even bothering to change her name. It is evident that their pretense of disliking her and insisting she remain outside was mere facade, stemming from their disdain for her. The murmurs of the crowd reached my ears, and Pei Yan's face fluctuated between red and white. Sister. Pei Mingzhu's face flushed crimson as she stammered at me. The clandestine affairs of the Pei family should not be divulged to outsiders. Yet I would not yield. If it is a secret, how does the imperial concubine know? Did the Pei family send word to Her Highness? This remark elicited the emperor's gaze towards Pei Wanner, who paled and stuttered in response. Women who enter the palace typically have no connections with the outside world. She seemed well informed about domestic matters, which implied that information flowed between her and her family. However, letters from concubines to their families are registered by the Internal Affairs Office before delivery. Yet, the imperial concubine's correspondence bore no such record, indicating clandestine exchanges. What began as mere rivalry among women could escalate to a breach of the emperor's privacy one day. Such implications were not lost on the emperor, whose gaze towards Pei Wanner now shimmered with skepticism. She shot me a furtive glare, silencing her tongue. After a brief silence in the hall, the emperor's laughter erupted, echoing joyously. Xie Qing, he chuckled, directing his mirth at Xie Linyuan. Your sister possesses quite the silver tongue. No wonder you often mention her before me. If I had such a lively and clever sister, I would cherish her as you do. He commanded me to rise and return to my seat. I rubbed my numb knees and raised an eyebrow at Xie Linyuan. Regardless of the truth behind the emperor's words, his defense of me in front of the assembly signified his support for Xie Linyuan. With the emperor's endorsement, the other officials began to treat us with newfound courtesy, as more guests approached our table to offer toasts. However, one matter piqued my curiosity. Did you truly mention me before the emperor? I leaned closer to him, inquiring with intrigue. Yet, Xie Linyuan feigned mystery, unwilling to elaborate. You shall know soon enough. After the banquet concluded, I accompanied Xie Linyuan back to the Zhao residence. The Xie family lacked a residence in the capital, and their newly granted estate was still under renovation, leaving us no choice but to squeeze into the Zhao household. Yuan, Pei Yan called out to me from behind. Upon hearing his voice, Xie Linyuan turned, wrapping his arm around my shoulder. Minister Pei. He addressed Pei Yan with a tone that was decidedly frigid and tinged with irreverence, clearly dismissive of him. 2 years prior, during our first meeting, Xie Linyuan had treated Pei Yan with far more courtesy. Yuan, come home with me. I have matters to discuss, Pei Yan implored, disregarding Xie Linyuan entirely. I retorted impatiently, what cannot be said here? Pei Yan was taken aback by my attitude. Though I had never been overly familiar with him in the past 2 years, I had still held him in some esteem. Yuan, it is one thing to bully Mingzhu, but how could you divulge such matters? Now, even cousin Wanner has fallen under the emperor's suspicion. Xie Linyuan scoffed. Is it truly so alarming that a mere imperial concubine is under scrutiny? He then appeared to realize something and continued. Indeed, the Pei family ascended through the connections of Pei Wanner. Of course, it is a cause for concern. Unlike us, the Xie family. He elongated his words in a manner that was exceedingly irksome. I could not help but chuckle. This was the same Xie Linyuan I had encountered at the age of 5, brimming with arrogance and vitality, capable of infuriating with a mere comment. His words were a profound humiliation to Pei Yan, a scholar striving to rise through the ranks. Sir Xie, tread carefully. While you have earned your military accolades, do remember this. The higher one ascends, the harder one falls. Rest assured, I am quite adept at lightness, I quipped lightly, leaving Pei Yan speechless. Minister Pei, you are, after all, a scholar of the highest rank. Having read so many tomes, you cannot discern right from wrong? Xie Linyuan shot a glance at Pei Mingzhu, who had been cowering behind Pei Yan. Mingzhu, indeed, is as foolish as a pig. You do not resent the man who stripped you of your garments, but instead bear malice toward the one who saved you. During the banquet, I had already recounted the series of events to Xia Linyuan. Upon hearing them, Pei Mingzhu's face turned pale. If word of this spread, her reputation would be utterly ruined. Xia Linyuan, why did you have to speak of this? She blurted out, panic-stricken, revealing her innermost thoughts. Pei Yan sensed something amiss and turned to glare at Pei Mingzhu. What did you mean by saying Yuan revealed something? Realizing her blunder, Pei Mingzhu attempted to feign ignorance, but this time, Pei Yan did not catch her, and she fell to the ground, crying out in pain. I exchanged a knowing glance with Xia Linyuan, and we departed in our carriage. Days later, a eunuch from the emperor's court arrived at the Zhao residence with a retinue. I knelt beside Xia Linyuan to receive the imperial edict. Within the decree, the emperor enumerated Xia Linyuan's numerous achievements, rewarding him with 100 taels of gold. As I reached the conclusion, I was startled to hear the eunuch mention my name. Miss Xia, of exceptional virtue and grace, is hereby conferred the title of Princess Mingi. I stood frozen, and Xia Linyuan gave me a gentle nudge. Only then did I realize and hastily express my gratitude. Once inside, I seized Xia Linyuan's arm, interrogating him. Why am I being rewarded for your accomplishments? Suddenly, I recalled his earlier words at the mid-autumn banquet, where he had mentioned me before the emperor. Has the title of princess emboldened you to question your brother? He teased, adopting a mock-serious tone before shifting to a more somber demeanor. Old Zhao informed me when he brought you home that you had suffered greatly in the capital, even fearing for your life. I regretted allowing you to come here. Later, when I met the emperor, he offered me a title, which I declined. I sought to exchange all my military honors to secure your safety. Upon hearing this, my heart ached, and tears threatened to spill. You sought the emperor's approval for me? I hold military power. Should I be granted a title, it would surely incite the emperor's jealousy. It is wiser to request a reward for you, assuring the emperor of my intentions, and proving that I will not act recklessly with you in mind. Yuan, Xia Linyuan called my name softly, laden with guilt. 2 years ago, when I was grievously injured, I feared that if I were to perish, you would be left without support. Hence, I agreed to Pei Yan's proposal to take you away, a decision I now deeply regret. Now that you are a princess, recognized by the emperor as my sister, a member of the Xia family, we also have a residence in the capital, and old Zhao will remain here. The Pei family will no longer dare to bully you. Unbeknownst to me, Xia Linyuan had orchestrated so much for my sake. My heart, which had drifted for 2 years, finally found peace. All my resentment and grievances dissipated like leaves in the wind. Initially, I believed Xia Linyuan's efforts on my behalf were sufficient. Yet he surprised me once more. The inspector of the capital, Lord Zhou, a close friend of Xia Linyuan, was entrusted with a task. 2 weeks later, a resounding drumbeat echoed before the capital's courthouse. The populace gathered, knowing it signified the interrogation of a criminal. A reasonably handsome man was pinned to the ground. The magistrate of Jingzhou took his seat upon the dais and publicly revealed the man's identity. He was none other than Gao Yuan, the illegitimate son of Lord Gao, the Minister of Revenue. He relied on his handsome appearance and his ability to recite a few lines of poetry to deceive the daughters of affluent families. Taking advantage of their unguarded moments, he would lace their tea with drugs, then take liberties with them, ultimately swindling them of all their wealth. Given the matter's implications for their honor, the duped young ladies had no choice but to swallow their grievances. Gao Yuan had enjoyed a streak of good fortune in his endeavors, but recently, he unexpectedly lost his footing in a tavern and was apprehended by the inspector. Such cases would typically not attract the particular attention of the Jingzhou Yin. However, the inspector, aligned with General Xia, was particularly zealous and insisted on a public trial. Although he was perplexed, he had no choice but to comply. The Jingzhou Yin demanded that Gao Yuan confess his crimes verbatim. Having committed numerous misdeeds, Gao Yuan was too fearful to provide specifics. He recalled advice from a fellow inmate the previous night to focus on the most memorable incident. What stood out the most? Was it not the thrashing he received at the tavern a month prior? This was the lone occasion in his years of wrongdoing where he had faltered.
Indeed.
Gao Yuan suddenly realized that if he spoke of this incident, given that he had ultimately gained nothing from it, he might receive a lighter sentence. Your Honor, I confess. A month ago, I encountered the Miss Pei, who was disguised as a man at a bookshop. Noticing her bulging purse, I deliberately approached her, got her intoxicated, and stole her money. The crowd gasped in astonishment. With his objective achieved, Xia Linyuan signaled to have Gao Yuan taken away. He had initially believed he had escaped unscathed, yet unbeknownst to him, he was destined to spend the remainder of his days behind bars. This incident quickly spread throughout the streets and alleys of the capital, proclaiming that the Miss Pei, disguised as a man, had been drugged and robbed of all her wealth. Once the repairs on the Xia residence were completed, I moved in with Xia Linyuan. The servants reported that Pei Yan had been waiting outside the estate, eager to see me. He stated that the anniversary of our parents' passing was approaching, and as their daughter, I should pay my respects. This rationale was beyond reproach. Having been in the capital for 2 years, it was time for me to visit them. On the day of the memorial, I boldly entered the Pei family home for the first time. It was more expansive than the Xia residence, and its renovations were notably more opulent. Upon my arrival in the ancestral hall, the other members of the Xia family exchanged glances, reluctantly bowing to me. I disregarded them, lighting 3 incense sticks and kneeling on the mat, respectfully bowing thrice before my parents' tablets. Suddenly, a commotion erupted outside. "Why won't you let me in?" Pei Mingzhu stood at the door, her face streaked with tears, glaring at me defiantly. Pei Yan frowned, signaling for the servants to hastily escort her away. Her cries faded into the distance, interspersed with curses directed at me. After the rites, I rose to exit, with Pei Yan following closely behind. Yuan, since you have returned, let me show you your room." Observing his eager expression, I feigned curiosity. "Since I am back, does that mean Pei Mingzhu will be sent away?" At the mention of Pei Mingzhu, Pei Yan wore a pained expression. Mingzhu's reputation has been tarnished. As a vulnerable woman, she would struggle to survive if she were to leave. It would be better to keep her at home. "I promise she will stay far from you, and will not disturb you." I regarded the cautious Pei Yan. Just as he had arranged for me to reside in the outer courtyard 2 years prior, his outward politeness masked an unyielding decree. There was no room for negotiation. I turned on my heel and walked straight outside. Yuan, can you truly not tolerate Mingzhu?" I was aware that she had wronged me regarding the tavern incident, and now that she was confined by me, she had already been punished. Yuan, please show some understanding for your brother. When you went missing, our parents perished searching for you. The entire Pei family is left with just me. When I saw Mingzhu, who was homeless, I brought her home as a reminder of you, as she is of the same age and bears a resemblance to you. She has accompanied me for many years. One cannot simply disregard such ties. Pei Yan buzzed in my ear like a persistent fly, his incessant explanations wearing my patience thin. He sought my understanding while simultaneously pleading for my sympathy. I suddenly thought of Xia Linyuan, who often teased me yet resolved all matters behind the scenes. "You are quite right, Sir Pei." I turned my head to face Pei Yan, bestowing upon him a courteous smile. "Pei Mingzhu has accompanied you for many years, just as Xia Linyuan has been with me. If you cannot let go of Pei Mingzhu and wish to remain with her, I too cannot part with Xia Linyuan. Henceforth, I shall solely remain by Xia Linyuan's side as a member of the Xia family. Moreover, how laborious it must have been for you to scheme so diligently to keep me in the outer courtyard, enlisting the help of the teacher and the matron to belittle me, spreading tales of my foolishness. Now that I have returned, does that not align perfectly with your desires?" Pei Yan's complexion paled. The gentle facade he wore as a caring brother was shattered by my words, leaving him visibly shaken. "How did you find out?" A sudden whim led me to scale a wall, and I inadvertently overheard. He attempted to grasp my arm to keep me from leaving, but my guards swiftly intervened.
Oh.
And by the way, upon my arrival today, Xia Linyuan, fearing I would be bullied, specifically dispatched 4 subordinates to accompany me. 2 months later, Xia Linyuan set off once more for the frontier. I remained alone in the capital, occasionally visiting the Zhao family. Whenever I missed Xia Linyuan, I would travel to Yuqing to see him. Another year passed, and Xia Linyuan sent an urgent missive, urging me to hasten to Yuqing. Fearing he had been injured again, I hurriedly rode, scarcely eating as I focused on the journey. Upon my arrival, I discovered he was perfectly well. He merely wished for me to join the wedding feast. I was taken aback. He was clearly seeking revenge for the last time I visited, when I had teased him about being perpetually single. His new bride was a remarkable woman. Upon learning of my previous troubles, she scolded Xia Linyuan soundly. I remained in Yuching for a time, not returning immediately. Xia Linyuan busied himself with local affairs, while I assisted my sister-in-law in caring for the children. Occasionally, I would hear whispers from the capital. It was said that the Pei family had fallen into disarray. Due to the damage to her reputation, no one was willing to marry Pei Mingzhu. Soon enough, a dashing young man appeared at her side, and the two quickly fell in love, deciding to commit to one another. Pei Yan, with no other options, consented to the match. However, on the wedding day, the groom mysteriously vanished. At the same time, the Pei residence was swiftly surrounded by soldiers. Pei Yan learned that the charming young man was, in fact, a spy from a rival nation. Seeing Pei Mingzhu as an easy target, he had deliberately approached her. With just a few coaxing words, Pei Mingzhu slipped into Pei Yan's study and acquired the location of the granaries. Fortunately, the inspector acted swiftly. Only half of the granary was destroyed by fire. The spy escaped without being captured. The emperor, infuriated, dismissed Pei Yan from his post without hesitation, confiscated all the Pei family's assets, and banished him from the capital forever. Pei Mingzhu was reduced to the status of a slave and sent to the palace as a lowly maid, tasked with menial duties for the eunuchs. The favored concubine Pei, likewise, fell from grace. She harbored a vendetta against Pei Mingzhu, frequently concocting various reasons to torment her. Pei Yan had always been the most outstanding member of the Pei family in his generation. With his downfall, the Pei family gradually declined. Pei Yan's uncle retired to the countryside, intending to return home as a gentleman with his wealth. However, he encountered a band of robbers along the way, losing not only his money but also suffering broken legs, which led to his untimely demise. The once mighty Pei family crumbled into ruin, leaving many to lament their fate. That evening, upon returning home after a mission to eliminate bandits, I seized the opportunity to question Xia Linyuan. Is Pei Yan's uncle's fate connected to you? Xia Linyuan hesitated, then nodded and shook his head. I did not harm him. I merely shared some information with the bandits, indicating that a wealthy household would soon pass through that area. The bandits seized Pei Yan's uncle's wealth, and Xia Linyuan immediately set out to confront them. Initially, he intended to escort the money back to the capital, but the emperor deemed it unworthy and awarded it to Xia Linyuan instead. He declined the reward and distributed it among the soldiers under his command. By the way, I have something for you. Xia Linyuan handed me a package. Upon opening it, I discovered the tablets of my biological parents. Although Pei Yan may be somewhat muddled, they have cherished thoughts of you for many years. It would be unthinkable for them to leave you without even a shelter from the storm in the end. As we spoke, my nephew had already dashed out to embrace Xia Linyuan's leg. Seizing the opportunity while he entertained the child, I returned to my room. After properly placing my parents' tablets, I lay down and closed my eyes. Tomorrow promises to be another splendid day. What a delightful treat shall I prepare for my nephew? The story concludes here. Thank you for listening, and we shall meet again in our next tale.